How great is that bumper, right? It's so good. I love it. I love that this series is 7 weeks long, so we get to watch it 7 times. Hey, if you're here in person, go ahead and take out your phone, and you can fill out our Connect card on our app, just like Faith told you to download the app. If you haven't done that, you can later on. Or if you're watching us on the app or online, be sure to fill out our digital Connect card. Let us know you're here. Tell us how we can pray for you. Our staff prays every Tuesday at our staff meeting, so when you write in prayer requests, we go through them and we pray for them. We get back to you to let you know that we prayed for you. So test us out. If you haven't done that already, go for it. So, okay, we're continuing our series, What the Health? And we've been walking through the 7 deadly sins. And today we're going to be talking about wrath, everyone's favorite 7 deadly sin. But one thing to know about me, you may not know this, because you're still getting to know me a little bit, is I'm a bit of a prankster. Like, I really like pranks. I think they're pretty fun. I've been known to, toilet paper someone's car, or, you never know what's going to happen. But I have a rule about pranking, that if you prank me, so this is all of you be warned, if you prank me, I will prank you back, but it will not be at the same level. The only way it works is you have to up that, right? And so Steve tested this when we first started dating many years ago. He had graduated college. I was still in college with a couple of roommates in an apartment, and he came down to visit, and he brought Christmas gifts for each of us. And we thought, so nice. My roommates were like, you have the best boyfriend. And I was like, I know. And he said, don't open them till I leave, because they're a surprise. And so he left, and we opened them. We were so excited. And they were 3 giant lumps of coal. And it said, 10 reasons why you deserve coal at Christmas time. And I was like, oh, it's on. It's on. So he came up to visit a couple weekends later. He was sleeping out in the living room. And so I was like, hey, why don't you just put your stuff in my room so that it's not in the way with all my roommates and everything like this. And little did he know that for the last few weeks, my roommates and I had been raiding the grocery stores for all those flyers, and so we, in the middle of the night, we set an alarm, got up, went outside to his car and filled his car with newspaper and left a note, 10 reasons why a car full of newspaper is the best gift at Christmas time. And I thought, done. So amazing. He's learned his lesson. And, he held off for a couple weeks. And then one day I was studying, it was finals time, and I'm studying in my room. My room was right by the main door to come in, and I was like, I hear an electric drill going on outside. But then I thought, well, it's probably my weird upstairs neighbors. They would be building a skate ramp in the hallway or something. And after a while I went out to my roommates, I was like, did you hear that drill out there? And they're like, yeah, I thought it was you. I'm like, I don't even own a drill. What would I be drilling? And so I was like, it sounded like it was outside. And they're like, well, go check the door. I'm like, I'm not checking the door. You check the door. And we went back and forth for a while. And finally one of my roommates was like, fine, I'll go check the door. And she opened the door. You couldn't really see it because it was this long hallway. And she went, oh my goodness. She slammed the door, came back, and she said, you have to go open the door. You have to. And she's hysterical. And we're like, what's behind the door? So we opened the door, and Steve had screwed a whole thing of plywood over the door with just one little square that we had to crawl out to get out, which then we had to go up to our upstairs neighbors, be like, hey, can we borrow your drill? Because there's a piece of plywood screwed over our door. And so I thought, that's it. And so we called later because he was so excited to see what my reaction would be. And I was just acting like nothing happened, totally cool. And he's like, come on. And finally I said, let's just be clear. I will get you back. And the only way to top it will be to burn my house down. And so Steve got really paranoid because he knows I wasn't kidding. And he was living with his mom at the time, and he put a lock on his bedroom door because he thought that's probably the only place that she's going to be able to hit me. And I'm very patient. And I waited over 2 months. And I planned. And then one night, my roommates and his twin brother, which was kind of a low blow, but his twin brother came down. Well, we went to go see a really long movie. And before we left, I just quickly unlocked the door, and they had instructions to steal every single thing in his room, but his Bible and his passport. That was it. Because he used to say, I really want to live a simple life, so I left him a note that said, welcome to the real simple life. And I stole the doorknob too. But stealing someone's stuff, that's amateur. Leaving a ransom note for every single item, now that's real, okay? So I thought, done, this is so good. Well, Steve got a little bent out of shape. He was really upset about it. He was like, this is not okay. And so I thought he was overreacting. He thought I went a little too far. We resolved it. He did some of the ransom notes, not all of them. Like, I wanted him to wear a dress and go order a kitty cone at the local ice cream shop, and he said that was too far. So I thought, it's just good fun, right? And so we had an 18-year truce ever since. Because, I thought, well, this is not worth ending our relationship over. But you're warned. Should you decide that you're a prankster, I'll prank you back, okay? But here's the thing, this is the problem with vengeance or revenge, right? Or retribution, is we never quite know what's the line. And retribution, revenge, vengeance, is at the heart of wrath. It's at the heart of wrath, right? Wrath is not just uncontrolled anger. Sometimes we hear wrath and we think it's just someone raging and out of control. No, wrath is anger that desires to see someone pay for hurt that's been done to you. Jeff Cook says it like this: there's a great pain in our world, and our anger alerts us to the fact that it needs fixing. We become angry when we see the weak exploited, those we care about injured, what we value destroyed. The desire for justice is legitimate. In fact, God desires the elimination of evil even more than we do. Yet when our longing for justice turns to violence and scorn, we no longer share God's perspective. We move from being part of the solution to becoming part of the problem. See, again, anger in and of itself is not a sin, right? Anger, when we are angry, we are more likely to sin. We are in a state where we're more likely to say something that we shouldn't say, do something that we shouldn't do. But wrath is different than anger. Again, wrath is an anger that seeks retribution, is an anger that seeks to make someone pay, that delights in punishment. That's wrath. And Frederick Buechner says it's actually like the funnest of all the deadly sins. He says it like this: of the 7 deadly sins, anger is possibly the most fun. To lick your wounds, to smack your lips over grievances long past, to roll over your tongue the prospect of bitter confrontation still to come, to savor the last toothsome morsel, both the pain you are given and the pain you are giving back. In many ways, it is a feast for a king. The chief drawback is that what you are wolfing down is yourself. The skeleton at the feast is you. See, again, wrath seeks to have a wrong paid back. I've been hurt, and something needs to be done about it. And often, the source of our wrath is excessive expectations of how we should be treated, how we should be spoken to, how we should be dealt with. Someone didn't meet my expectation, they hurt me, and now they need to pay. That's the only fair way. And so, wrath, when we really boil it down, it desires to inflict pain, because we believe that only when people suffer, only when it hurts a little bit, will someone learn, will someone do something different. And we think that we are going about justice. But the problem is, we're not very good at justice. So when we think that we're just making it right and making it fair, often it's destructive. Destructive for the other person and destructive for ourselves. And God has been trying to deal with this problem of retribution since the beginning, because this is a human problem. And so God established a nation called Israel. And he said, Israel, you're going to live differently. You're going to stand out. You're going to follow my ways. And when you do that, people will see you. They will see that it's different. And then they'll be pointed to the one true, real God. And so God gave Israel the law, which is sometimes known as the Mosaic Law. And it's the 10 Commandments plus some. There's the 10 Commandments, which a lot of us know, but then there's a lot more to it. But it was meant to be a way that Israel would live differently. And one of the things that's really unique to the law is what's called proportionate retribution. Proportionate retribution. Because there was a saying back then of 10 of yours for one of ours. 10 of yours for one of ours. And what that meant is, if you kill someone from our tribe, we're going to come and kill 10 people from your tribe. And then what do you think happened after that, right? It wasn't like, okay, we're even. Nope, they'd say, okay, well, you did this, and now we're going to burn your village down. And then you burn the village down, and then what happens? Then is this escalating cycle of violence. And so God came in and gave Israel a different way. It said proportionate retribution. These are some of the passages in the law. It says, but if there is a serious injury, you are to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. In Leviticus it says, anyone who injures their neighbor is to be injured in the same manner. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. The one who has inflicted the injury must suffer the same injury. And then in Deuteronomy, show no pity, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Right? So God changes the ratio. Right? The ratio was 10 to 1. One of yours, 10 of yours to one of ours. You do any damage, we're going to escalate it. And God says, no, 1 for 1. 1 for 1. Proportionate retribution. And this is a move towards compassion. This would have stood out the time when the Mosaic Law was given. But then Jesus comes along and he turns the whole thing upside down. He changes the rules like he does over and over again. And so, when Jesus shows up, again, this whole series we've been talking about the 7 deadly sins. It's not about managing your behavior. It's not about just changing what you do. All of them, it is a heart problem. And so wrath is a heart problem. And Jesus makes that really clear. He says this in Matthew 5. You have heard that it was said to people long ago. So he's talking about the Mosaic Law. You shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court. Anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. Okay, so just like now, back then, murder was the ultimate sin. Right? To take the life of another person, that's the highest crime, and you are subject to the most severe judgment. And Jesus says, you have heard it said, meaning the law, the Mosaic Law told you this, right? This eye for eye, tooth for tooth. But I say to you. And so what Jesus is doing there is he is redefining the law for everyone. And this is a really big deal. It's kind of like, again, I've said this before. If I were to stand up here and say, you've heard the Bible said, but I say, right? I'm giving you, you'd be like, no, we don't do that, right? You don't get to change the Bible. So Jesus is changing the Mosaic Law. Why? Because Jesus is God, right? He gets to, because he's God. And so he's saying, actually, it's not just enough not to physically murder someone. When you are angry in your heart, and then when you have wrath in your heart, it is like you have committed murder and you are subject to judgment. The same judgment, right? So he's upping the ante. And then he says, if you call someone Raka, if you call someone fool, right? And that, to give someone that name would mean like idiot, empty-headed, and it's this utter contempt for someone because a name in Jesus' time was the essence of someone. So to say that is to say, at your essence, you are worthless. At your essence, I have contempt for you. And Jesus says, this is as bad as murdering someone. Because you don't care for them. You don't love them. And all of this, right? He says, all of this, it's like throwing your life on a garbage pit. Because when he says the fires of hell there, he's actually, the word there is Gehenna. And Gehenna is about like hell on earth. It's not the same word for eternal hell, which is Hades. Right? So Jesus isn't talking about like eternal judgment. He's saying Gehenna, because Gehenna is an actual place. He's referencing to something they would know. Gehenna was the trash pit on the outside of town where the fires burn and you burn the bodies of your enemies. It was a disgusting, terrible place. Right? It's not a place that you would go hang out at. And so he's saying to let wrath, to let anger be in your heart, to be in the center of your life, is like taking your life and throwing it in Gehenna, throwing it on this disgusting trash pit. You're wasting your life. He's giving them a picture of what living out of wrath does to someone. And our Christian tradition holds that wrath shows up in 3 different ways, 3 different forms. It's too quickly, too much, too long. Too quickly, too much, too long. Those are the 3 forms of wrath. So too quickly is when you're quick to anger, right? Where you're fast-tempered, you're easily angered, and this can be with another person. So I know that I have people in my life that just like push my buttons, right? And you're just quicker to lose your temper. You don't have as much patience, right? So we all have those types of people, but it's also about an issue, right? And we know nowadays, even more than before, we see people are so quick to anger and offense over just about anything. Just go on social media, like everyone's so mad all the time, right? So it can be either of those, where you're really quick. And one of the ways to test if wrath has gotten a grip in your heart, if you're struggling with wrath, is to see how quickly are you provoked to anger. How is that your go-to? Do you get there really fast? Right? That's one sign. But the other one is too much, and that's when we overreact. That's when our reaction is disproportionate to the trigger. And this can happen because, sometimes with a significant other, this happens because we've let something build up. And you haven't said it, and you haven't said it, and you haven't said it, and then finally they do it again, and you just lose it, and they're like, what is happening? Right? Because they didn't know that you were building this case against them. Or sometimes it's because you have an unresolved issue or hurt in your life, and it's like you've laid a trap for people. And suddenly someone steps on it and they had no idea, and you explode because it's a trigger issue for you, and that person didn't know they were stepping into that trap. So again, another way to test our heart is to see, is it too much? Am I easily angered, and am my anger disproportionate to what's actually going on? But the last one is really the one that we struggle with the most, and that is too long. Is too long. And this is when we don't forgive, when we hold on to something. And when we do that, we can't get past it. Bitterness starts to set into our life. And here's the reality. When you hold on to something, anger becomes a habit. It becomes a habit of the heart, and it leads us to too quickly and too long. Too quickly and too much. Right? If we hold on too long, because we're hurt about something and we don't know how to get past it, suddenly anger is the habit of the heart. And Andy Stanley says it really well. He says, show me an angry person and I'll show you a hurt person. And I guarantee you that person was hurt because something has been taken from them. Somebody owes them something, if nothing else, an apology. We all know folks whose anger could be verbalized in one of the following ways. You took my reputation, you stole my family, you took the best years of my life, you stole my first marriage, you robbed me of my teenage years, you robbed me of my purity, you owe me a raise, you owe me an opportunity to try, you owe me a second chance, you owe me affection. The root of anger is the perception of something has been taken. See, when we feel like someone owes us, the only way forward that we can see is payback. Right? That's what's fair. You have to pay back what was owed. It's not right to just go do something wrong and then just get off the hook. And so we fall into this trap of, I need retribution. I need revenge. This person has to pay. We want what is fair. But once again, Jesus comes along and messes it all up. And he changes even our understanding of retribution. He says, not the way that you think it is. And again, he says, you have heard the law that says the punishment must match the injury, right? That's proportionate retribution. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer the other cheek also. If you are sued in court and your shirt is taken from you, give your coat too. If a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles. And again, the law of proportionate retribution relies on punishment. It says the way to make things fair is if you do something to someone, you get the exact same thing. But Jesus says at the heart, it doesn't work. Retribution like that doesn't work, no matter if it's proportionate. Jesus changes the ratio. It goes from 10 to 1 to 1 to 1. And Jesus says it's 0 to 1. 0 to 1. No retribution. That's not the way that we do things anymore. Because it doesn't help. And what Jesus is addressing is what's known as the myth of redemptive violence. The myth of redemptive violence. Because Walter Wink was the first person to coin that phrase. When he says this, from a very young age, we're taught there are good guys and bad guys, right? And you side with the good guys. When you watch a movie, you watch a TV show, you're with the good guys. And then when the bad guys have what's coming to them, we rejoice, right? We're able to put all of our shame and our anger and our resentment and our hurt and our rebellion, so we can project all of that onto the bad guy. Because bad guys deserve bad things. And we believe that violence is the only way to make the world right. So again, Walter Wink says it this way. In short, the myth of redemptive violence is the story of the victory of order over chaos by means of violence. Life is combat. Any form of order is preferable to chaos, according to this myth. Ours is neither a perfect nor perfectible world. It is theater of perpetual conflict in which the prize goes to the strong. Peace through war, security through strength, these are core convictions. We are taught to believe that violence is the ultimate solution. And sometimes that's violence in action, and that can be spanking, that can be hitting, that can be using a gun, or it shows up in all sorts of other ways. It can be yelling in our words and gossip. We can be violent in all sorts of ways because we believe that people have to pay in order for them to change. They have to hurt in order for things to be different. Andy Stanley says it like this: it's easy to believe that the only remedy for our anger is payback. After all, isn't that how you settle a debt? What other option is there? And even if there were some other way around the debt, it wouldn't be fair. People ought to pay what they owe. To cancel a debt is to let the guilty party off the hook. They need to pay, otherwise they'll probably turn around and hurt someone else. Right? If we're honest, we believe that in order to make it right, they have to pay, and it has to hurt to some degree. That's this myth of redemptive violence. So we believe if people suffer pain, then they will learn. But that's not what Jesus teaches us. That's not what Jesus teaches us. Richard Rohr says it like this. He says, but there's no such thing as redemptive violence. Violence doesn't save. It only destroys in both the short and long term. Jesus replaced the myth of redemptive violence with the truth of redemptive suffering. He showed us on the cross how to hold the pain and let it transform us rather than pass it on to others around us. See, Jesus points out that revenge and retribution and violence, it doesn't solve the problem. It just perpetuates the issue. We continue to have an escalating cycle of violence. And Jesus, he gives us a different picture of how we're supposed to respond. He says, don't resist an evil person. And that, there's a whole bunch of us that go, I don't like that. What is that? I'm supposed to be like a doormat, let people do all sorts of mean things, just walk all over me and let them get away with it? Like, what are we talking about here, Jesus? And he gives us 3 pictures about what this looks like. And the first one he says is, turn the other cheek. If someone slaps you on the right hand, turn and offer them the other cheek. And sometimes we hear this as like being meek and mild, but that's not what's going on here. See, if someone were to hit you on the right hand, that would be a backhanded slap, right? And it's the equivalent of being spit on. And you would only do this to an inferior, right? So when someone were to hit you that way, they are saying, you're inferior to me, you're less than me, and they're trying to shame you. And so what Jesus says is when you've been hit, turn the other way, because they would have to hit you with their open palm. And that you are saying, I'm not your inferior, I am your equal. And you are forcing that person to come face to face with their own violence. You're standing and you are not absorbing the shame. You're not hitting back, but you're also not receiving the message of you're less than me. And so you're exposing the violence in that other person. The other one he says is give them your coat. And so he's saying if someone's suing you, you owe someone and they take you to court and they're taking your shirt, give them your coat also. And this is not Jesus saying, be extra generous and just like give away all your stuff. He's being really strategic here. And he's saying that if someone takes you to court and they're going to take your shirt, well, what it means is that person they can't pay back their debt. They can't pay it back. And they only had 2 pieces of clothing. They had the shirt and they had the coat, the outer coat that they would use as like a blanket and a pillow. And so when you take someone's coat, it's actually against the law. It's against the law. It's against God's law. And Jesus is saying, expose them. Expose what they're doing, right? And it's this. If you lend money to one of my people among you who is needy, do not treat it like a business deal. Charge no interest. If you take a neighbor's cloak as a pledge, return it by sunset. Because that cloak is the only covering your neighbor has. What else can they sleep in? When they cry out to me, I will hear, for I am compassionate. So Jesus says, you know what? Get naked in front of them and show them, expose their own evil, greedy intentions. Make them come face to face with how they're actually behaving and what they are doing. So this isn't passive. This is reactive. It's provocative, but it's not provoking more violence. And then he gives a third one. And he says, go the extra mile. If you're forced to go 1 mile, then go 2. And so Roman soldiers, because remember, Rome was occupying Israel, They could come and they could demand at any point for someone to carry their armor for a mile. And the mile was the legal limit. And yes, it might have helped the soldier, but really it was a power play. It was this reminder of, I have more power than you. You are occupied. We are in charge. And so what Jesus says is, yeah, you can't choose the first mile. You don't have a choice. You don't have any warning. You're not going to get paid. But you can choose the second. You get to take something that isn't a choice, where someone is trying to make you a victim, and you get to be someone who actively participates. And again, you're exposing the power play. And so all three of these are provocative. They're all provocative. And Jesus, when he says, resist an evildoer, that word is really important, because that's actually a military term, the word resist. And that word, he says, don't resist an evil person. He says, don't set yourself up against someone else. Don't come armed with resistance, ready to fight. N.T. Wright translates it well. He says, do not use violence to resist evil. Because to resist is to come armed for a fight. And so Jesus says, don't use violence to fight back. That's not effective. That's not the way that you're supposed to resist evil. Instead, he does this provocative actions that don't provoke more violence, but provoke the other person to look at what's going on in themselves, to look at their own intentions. It is to resist, but not resist with evil, not to resist with violence. And so in all three of these situations, you would have it being done to you. Right? This is someone acting on, you don't have a choice. You would be the victim in all three situations. And Jesus is challenging that mentality and saying, don't be the victim. Don't play the victim. Instead, you have power. You have power to expose what's going on. Because victim mentality leads us to hit back. When we feel like we're a victim, that's when we're most likely prone to wrath. Andy Stanley says, hurt, rejection, criticism, stuff not going our way, all these things leave us feeling like victims. Victims are powerless. Victims have no control over their lives. Victims are at the mercy of others. Victims can only react. Victims are held prisoner by circumstances beyond their control. It's these feelings of victimization that fuel our justifications and excuses. Victims don't want to be proactive about changing. They want to be proactive about making sure the person who hurt them pays. And so Jesus challenges us to say, you are not powerless. Even when someone is trying to make you feel that way, even when they are going out of their way to make you feel small and make you feel like you don't have control, you still have choice. And when you choose this provocative way, you open up the way of redemption. You allow a way forward even for the other person, because they have the opportunity to actually see what they're doing. It makes me think, just recently I was listening to a news story, and they were talking about some of the protests that were going on, and some of the protesters said they were going to hold up mirrors, because they were worried about police violence, and they were going to hold up mirrors as this opportunity to say, reflect on what you're going to do. Reflect on your actions. Right? That's a provocative thing to do. Because if you were to go and hurt that person, you would have to look at yourself right in the face to see it. Right? And that's what Jesus is saying. Hold up a mirror to all of these people and let them see what exactly they're doing, and give them the chance to change their ways. Paul challenges us this way. He says, never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see you are honorable. Do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. Dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God. For the scriptures say, I will take revenge. I will pay them back, says the Lord. Instead, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their head. You will hold up a mirror for them to see what is going on. Don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. Wrath comes about when we think that I need to make things right for me. Right? I need to look out for me. I need to make sure that things go my way, that this person isn't going to be let off the hook. But as followers of Jesus, it is not our job to go about administering justice. That's not our job. We are not the judge. Jesus is the judge, right? And so we're called to be loving, even to our enemies. That's our call. We are called to forgive as we have been forgiven. We let him take care of it. So So what does this look like in real life? I'm going to give you a really small example of it, and then we're going to talk about some practical things that you can do to address wrath at the core of your heart. And so I studied abroad in New Zealand my junior year in college, and I had the worst flatmates ever. Like, the worst. There were 6 of us, and they were terrible. And our house became the party house and the drug house, so, like, it was just trash all the time. And I was not a big partier, not into drugs, and so one night I knew they were going to have this wild raging party, so I went and stayed with my friend that night. We were gone most of the day. We figured everyone will be, like, cleared out, and all the hungover people will be gone, and we'll come back. And we came back for lunch, and I kid you not, the place was trash, and literally, I'm not exaggerating, every single dish and every single pot and pan was just, like, destroyed in the kitchen. I mean, my friend was like, "You literally have the worst roommates ever. These people are terrible," and they were terrible. Right? And she's so mad on my behalf. Like, this is ridiculous. You should throw away all the pots and pans and the plates, like, just to teach them a lesson. And part of me was like, "Yeah, we totally should. Like, if I could pay them back 10 for 10, 10 for 1, I totally would." And then, as I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, that's probably not a good idea. How are they going to respond? They're not going to be like, "Oh, thanks for that. Like, we really appreciate you teaching us a lesson," right? It just get worse. And suddenly I had this thought, well, if Jesus can wash his disciples' feet, I can probably wash my lousy roommate's dishes, right? And so we didn't have a dishwasher. It was all by hand. Every dish. I don't know what they did. I don't know what they made in the middle of their party, but it was crazy. And so my friend and I said, well, I don't wash the dishes instead. And so we started doing it, and it actually became kind of fun. Because we were like, I wonder what they're going to do. Like, what are they going to see? And they came down, like, right as we finished, and you literally saw them be like, they were still hungover. They look at us and like, what? And they just kind of walked out of the room. Like, they just didn't know what to do. But it disarmed the situation. And I would like to tell you that it changed everything. And everything got better, and, like, suddenly they stopped throwing wild parties. Nope, that didn't happen. But it didn't get worse. It didn't get worse. And it changed me. Because I realized, like, I don't want to live that way. I don't want to live hitting back and escalating situations. Like, that's just not how Jesus calls us to live. See, Jesus says, don't fight fire with fire. Proportionate retribution doesn't work. Don't fight fire with fire. Fight fire with water. Be different. Live different. Fight fire with water. Extinguish it rather than inflaming it. See, wrath does not care about restoration at all. Wrath doesn't care about a way forward for the other person. It only seeks revenge, and at the heart of revenge is destruction. And we believe that if that person pays and there's some form of destruction, I will get better. But the truth is, there is a hurt and a wound at the heart of your wrath that can never be repaid. It can't be paid back. And the thing that gets out of whack, we talk about how each 7 deadly sin has a virtue that gets out of distortion. And the one that gets out of whack when it comes to wrath is forgiveness. Because here's the reality. Those of us who are followers of Jesus, you didn't get what you deserved, right? God didn't pay you back 1 for 1. You got what you didn't deserve. You got an unearned grace, an unearned mercy. That you were forgiven and accepted, and God made a way for you to go forward and be different. And he says, that's how you're supposed to forgive. Forgive others as I have forgiven you. And at the heart of forgiveness is restoration. See, Jesus doesn't go around combating people. He combats sin. And he combats the sin of people's lives. But he doesn't go around fighting people. He fights systems that hold people back so that everyone can find a way forward. That's what he does over and over again. And so, what does that look like in our world? How do we forgive as we've been forgiven? How do we work through wrath? And I want to give us 2 practices. The first one is really good for too quickly and too much. If you feel like, that might be me, one of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do is keep an anger journal, right? And I mean, like, it can be a note on your phone or it can be a piece of paper, but especially if you're on social media, have it right there. And when you feel angry, right, if it's a comment that someone made, or if it's at work and you've really been struggling with someone and you're in this situation, keep it with you and make a note of what made you feel angry and how you want to respond. But don't do it, right? Don't respond Just write how you want to respond. And at the end of the week, take a look at what you cataloged and begin to see what are the patterns. Where are the things that are provoking me to anger? And you can start to pray about that. You can bring that to God and start to have some healing conversations. So that's one practice. But the reality is, most of us, the reason why we are angry is because we are hurt. And again, there is a debt that actually can never be repaid. Something was taken, something was hurt, and it's just gone. And we want it to be repaid, but it can't be. And so we're angry about it. We want retribution, but it's not really possible. So Andy Stanley says this: you can't pay back a missing relationship. You can't pay back a reputation. There's no way to make up for years of criticism and neglect. How does someone give you back your innocence, your purity? These debts cannot be repaid. The best thing to do is cancel them. The truth is, nothing can make up for the past. There's an emotional element involved in hurt that cannot be compensated through apologies, promises, or financial restitution. An apology does not erase experience. To cling to our hurt while waiting to be repaid is to allow the seeds of bitterness to take root and grow. And so, when we hang on to something for too long, thinking it needs to be repaid, it's only fair if it gets paid back. The person that we are poisoning is ourselves. That's what's going on. And so we have to learn how to forgive. And Andy Stanley actually gives a 4-step process, and I think it is so helpful. I've used it over and over and over again. I'm going to give it to you, right? And if you take notes, write these down, because they're really important. Because sometimes we don't know how to actually forgive. We might want to forgive, but we don't have a process. So this is a process. The first is identify who you are angry with, right? Who do you secretly wish to see fail? Who do you never want to see again? Who do you keep having imaginary conversations with? You know who that is. You're driving in the car, you're brushing your teeth, you're in the mirror, and you're like suddenly they pop in, all the things you want to say to them, right? Who's that person that you secretly wish isn't going to do well? And identify them and write it down. Write down who it is that owes you. And the second step is determine what they owe you. Because general forgiveness cannot heal a specific hurt. Right? You can't just generally forgive someone. So what was taken? Name that specifically. Is it, what do you need? Is it an apology? Is it money, time, marriage, family, job, reputation? What was taken from you? And what do you need to feel like you were paid back? I've literally had to do this with someone with a dollar amount and say, this amount of money, this is how much they stole. You gotta get specific with it. And then the third step, and this is an important one, is cancel the debt. You have to name the debt, specifically name it, and then you have to cancel it. And that's when we decide that the offending party doesn't owe us anymore. Because they can't pay it back anyways. It can never be repaid. And this can be a silent decision, but often we need to do an action that goes with it. So sometimes it's writing that person a letter and then tearing it up, right? It's naming all those things that they owed you and then burning it. I had a friend one time when I was working through forgiving someone, and they had them put a beautiful verse like that I could put on my refrigerator, so I saw it every day to remind myself, this is how we respond when we're hurt. Whatever that is, you decide, I'm canceling the debt. It's not worth it to carry it forward. They can't pay it back anyways. And you don't have to tell the other person, right? Because that can come off as an accusation, it can come off real bad. This is just for you. It's as far as it's up to you, live at peace. But the fourth step is the most important step. Because this is the one that we often miss, and we don't really know it. It's dismiss the case. And that means that, because forgiveness is a choice. It's a decision, right? Your feelings are the last thing to catch up with you when it comes to forgiveness. You can decide to forgive and still not feel great about that person, right? Forgiveness is the decision to say, I'm canceling the debt. But something is going to come up, because we don't forgive and forget. You don't forget, right? That's not the way the brain works. Something's going to come up that's going to trigger it all over again. And you're going to reopen that case, and it's going to feel real good to litigate it all and Remember all the ways that that person owes you. But then you're right back into it, right? In retribution and wrath. And so when that thing pops up, when we dismiss the case, we say, they do not owe me. I have canceled that debt. And we continually do that. Each time it gets triggered, we decide, no, I've already chosen. And my feelings might not have caught up to me yet, but the decision stands. I've chosen to forgive. See, our job is not to go about making sure that there's justice done, making sure that this person got what they deserve, this person got what they deserve. That's not our job. Our job is to live and love like Jesus. And so we need to be really careful. If anger has become a habit of the heart, that the remedy for that is forgiveness. And forgiveness needs to become the habit of our heart. And remember, forgiveness is a choice. It's not a feeling. The feelings will catch up eventually. We keep dismissing the case after we've done all that work because we have been forgiven. There is no case against us. Jesus dismissed the case. He canceled the debt. And we are called to do that and trust that God, who knows all things, He will make it right in the end. That's His job, not ours. Let's pray. Gracious God, thank you. Thank you for this reminder that we can trust you, that you're loving and you're good. God, forgive us for the ways that we have held on to anger too long, or we've been too quick to anger or had too much. And we ask that you would heal us, God, that you would help us to know that we've been forgiven, and that we would forgive others in that same way, that we would open up a path to restoration and not retribution. Thank you that you did this for us. We love you and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.